Hi. How are you? How are you, Elliot?
Good. How are you?
Good. I want to make sure that we're recording here. It's good to see you. I haven't seen you in
You as
person
well.
for so long.
I know it's been a long time. It's been pretty crazy because of Corona and everything.
I know. Hi, Roxanne.
Good morning, Latoya. Good morning, Elliot.
Hello.
You look beautiful.
Thank you. So do both of you.
Thank you. So first of all, just thank you both for doing this recording and being willing to kind of put yourselves out there. I think it's really hard, particularly when we're talking about Instagram, when we're talking about Twitter, we're talking about social media and something that kind of runs rampant on these social platforms, and it can bring out the best in people, and I think it can bring out the worst in people. And so I think it was really positive of you, Elliot, to want to bring this discussion to Instagram, to Twitter. Where else are you going to put this? Just Instagram and
um,
Twitter?
I'm gonna put it on YouTube as well.
Okay. Okay. So I want to introduce you first, or just have you introduce yourselves. But Elliot, when you tell us kind of where a little bit about you,
hmm
where you come from, what you bring with you to this conversation, can you share a little bit about why this conversation was also important to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in the South in Texas on a farm, and I live in Las Vegas now, and I'm a performer, and I'm on the new season of RuPaul's Drag Race, and with that comes a lot of new attention and a lot of you know, everybody wants to dissect everything that you do because you're being viewed by so many more people now. And so I think this conversation that we're going to have today is really important because I feel like it's something that I, as a cis white male, don't feel like I'm given permission sometimes to talk about. Um, and so I think the best way to do it is, obviously with the control of two incredibly powerful, beautiful Black women, steering the ship. I think that's the only way to do it because Black women really run this country and, save the day when they need to. And so I think it's an incredible opportunity to be able to talk about these things today because, it's something with this new platform. I think a lot more people will hear than, if it's just, somebody by themselves.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for putting yourself out there to do that.
Yeah.
Roxanne, can you tell us a little bit about you, what you're doing, what you do for work in our community, and what brings you to the conversation today?
Well, hello again, both Elliot and Latoya. I
Hi.
am Roxann McCoy, and I am the president of the Las Vegas NAACP. And I spend my time not only bringing about awareness, but fighting for not just civil rights, but human rights, because civil rights are human rights. And so some people want to have them as two separate issues, when at the end of the day, it's really all about treating people the way you want to be treated. And so I'm here today in order to have this conversation with both Elliot and whomever else is interested in understanding what basic human civil rights looks like.
Mm, thank
I
you.
love that.
And so, how much do you spend a lot of time doing this work, Roxanne? Is this like full-time work for you? And how did this begin for you? Where does this passion come from?
It began for me probably about 15, 20 years ago when I realized the injustices in mortgages. I used to work in the mortgage industry, and I began seeing the injustices and the disproportionality taking place in that arena. So I moved my business to um, the minority part of town to bring about a greater awareness just in terms of just mortgages alone, and how to educate minorities on how to become homeowners, because I realized in my business that there were very few of us coming to apply for mortgages. And I realized it's because nobody's taken the time to educate us on the process. So when I started delving into it from that lens as an adult person, then I began to realize that this just stretches far and wide in so many different arenas. Even though I grew up in Phoenix, which is a racist city, and they have a lot of prejudice there, when you live in your community, in your little bubble, you don't see it as that. You just see it as this is just the way that the world is. But then when you mature and you begin to see more parts of the world and you have the opportunity to live in different communities, you see that there's disparities that take place, and those disparities are taking place because of the color of one's skin, because of one's gender choice, because of one's language barrier. There's just all these things that come into them being discriminated against. And so for me, I wanted to do my part in order to try to balance that unbalanced ship as much as I could. Hence, I learned about the NAACP. I always knew about it, but I learned more about how do you fight injustices at a grassroots level in the communities in which you live that will have a ripple effect that goes out broad and wide to not just your community, but then it expands to your city, your state, and then the other states that are surrounding you. And so that's how I came to this.
And then Roxann, awesome. And then Roxann, just for the viewers who are unfamiliar with the NAACP, because I know, Elliott, you have a lot of younger viewers, don't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we know that Elliott, we've had a conversation with Elliott, so we know that he, of course, knows about the NAACP.
Yeah.
But what can you just in a snapshot tell us, where did this organization come from and how important is this organization throughout our country?
NAACP has been around since 1909, and the NAACP stands for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. When we originated, colored people were just that. They were Black people because we were called colored people in those days. But as time has evolved, colored people has come to encompass all people of colors: red, brown, green, Black. It's just the rainbow of people of color, which hence brings us to not just civil rights, it's human rights. And humans come in all shapes, sizes, and colors. And we fight for injustices that take place in our education system, our justice system, and our voting system, in our healthcare system. And we try to make sure that it's balanced and equitable for all people.
And so is it for all people of color or just Black people, or how do you approach that work?
So I approach it by all people of color because we are all one color or another. So like I said, our origination, we started out because Black people were called colored people, and that is where it emanated from. But as we have evolved, women have been discriminated against, and women have benefited from the civil rights fight. We got our rights to vote from that. The Disabilities Act emanated from the civil injustices that has taken place and from civil rights. So all of those things came about, and it wasn't just that those were Black people, but as time has gone on, we evolved to include all people, not just colored people. And now colored people are no longer called colored people. We're called Black people or African American people, but we are inclusive of all people.
Thank you, Madam President. Isn't she amazing?
Yeah, and that's incredible.
Yeah, I just love talking to her. I feel like I'm like a sponge whenever I'm on the phone with her. I know you're the same. I'm going to go ahead and, Elliott, if you're okay, I'd like to play the clip that has become such a controversy. And I'd love for you and Roxann just to begin a dialogue about this openly and honestly. Okay, here we go.
She is, in a word, Black girl magic. Yeah. That is what she brought. She felt that should be her message. And it was, but she did it so elegantly though. Yeah. It wasn't aggressive. You can't come for it. It wasn't aggressive. It was done together. It was done with taste. You could tell.
So first of all, everyone looks fierce.
Thank you.
You look so gorgeous.
Thank you.
What do you think, Elliott, when you see that?
I think the reason why this whole situation is so kind of shocking and overwhelming is because I still look back on this clip and I'm sitting with 2 African American drag queens and then a drag queen from Puerto Rico. And, you know, they're agreeing with me and the conversation is just flowing like organically and effortlessly. And it still boggles my mind to think that that really truly upset a lot of people and made a lot of people decide who I am without knowing anything about me. And so it's still pretty upsetting because I still watch it back and I try to dissect it and figure out like what was so wrong. But you know, when people say, "Hey, you did something wrong," I'm the first one to go, "Well, what did I do? Please explain to me so that I know," because it is something that comes from a place of, I don't want to say ignorance, but ignorance. Like if I had no recollection that the word aggressive really had taken on almost a new meaning when it comes to people of color. I had no idea that it was something that was upsetting. And so
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to talk today about it, because I hate the idea of upsetting people. I hate the idea of anybody being upset by anything I do, because I just want to, you know, I want love and positivity and uplifting people. To be my narrative and my story. And so it's hard to feel like I've upset people.
Roxann, can you tell us the impact that clip had on you and what your thoughts are?
Sure. And thank you for Elliott for wanting to really have this conversation, and Latoya for sharing it with me. When I looked at the clip, I had to look at it a couple of times to really kind of understand where the frustration and the anger came from. So I'm looking at it from a couple of different ways. One of them is that I got what you mean, like it wasn't aggressive, meaning it wasn't like in your face. So then I get where the negative part could have come from, that Black men and Black women are aggressive. And then the negativity, since it's like in your face, it's just like almost like intimidating, overwhelming, and that type of sense. But listening to you use it in that context, um, I mean, I had to listen to feel like if I wanted to be offended by it or not, because listening to it, it didn't bother me because I got what you were saying. It's
Yeah.
like a dress. It's like it wasn't overwhelming. It was subtle. It was classy.
Yeah.
It was elegant. And so the word aggressive could be taken just a couple of different ways. And then in the way that you used it, again, I had to just kind of like look at it and say, okay, well, should I be offended? Because I wasn't offended, but
Yeah.
you know, other people were offended by it, and those were the reasons that I'm going to sense that they are. Not to speak for anyone else, I will speak from my lens, is that as Black people, we're looked upon as, oh, they're always in your face, they're always aggressive, they're always loud, they're always, you know, so when you use aggressive, those people that took offense to that could have taken offense to it because it's like, you know, Black people aren't just loud. White people loud too. Black people are
Yeah.
like in your face. White people are in your face too. So with the climate in which we are in today, that everyone is hypersensitive on everything that everyone said, and we're quick to jump on it, you know, that I would say, you know, maybe we need to take a step back a little bit and maybe understand like where that person could have been coming from. Because I will tell you, as a Black woman, I'll say some shitty stuff myself. I mean, you know, it's just human nature. But does it mean
Yeah.
that I have ill intent? Does it mean that I am being derogatory? Sometimes, probably, but most of the time, it is not. And so we're so super sensitive on anything that anybody says, is that you're making people almost afraid to just talk, period. Because
Yeah.
if I say one thing that you might view as wrong, you know, I'm going to be, you know, put out to pasture and
Well,
shot in the head.
and Roxann, let's be honest, majority of people would not sit here and have this conversation on camera with you. They would be afraid. to have this conversation. And I think that's your point, is that we have to get it to a point where we can talk to each other. We have to be able to be honest and real and vulnerable with each other. Roxann, can you tell me, so, you know, from my perspective, also as a Black woman, you know, I immediately go to our history, right? And I start thinking about what I grew up knowing and what I grew up being taught by my family, you know, the negative kind of stereotypical radio television shows like Amos and Andy, and you know, a lot of the minstrel kind of artworks that depicted Black women as these aggressive, angry, you know, mean characters that were disrespectful. And then you take a look at what we see right now, and you don't see a lot of Roxanns and Latoyas out there just trying to bring, you know, the LGBTQ community together with the Black community, which is totally what we're doing right now. So what are your thoughts about that in terms of how our history has now impacted that stereotype that you and I are subjected to every single day?
For me, you know, that stereotype, you know, is unfortunate, but it is a part of our history. And it really came from a place of ignorance on the part of those people that were perpetuating those stereotypes at that time. You know, as Black women, we were forced to be strong. We were forced to be the carriers of not just our families, but of our masters' families as well. And so we had to be able to carry all of those things, which makes us the amazing women that we are today. So for me, when I think back on that, I think back and I put it in the context of, it was just straight ignorance, and it was just a way for white people to demean the Black woman so that she did not know her worth and she did not know her value. And so consequently, you'll get these pictures of making us look like we're angry Black women, or making us look like, you know, we're the Aunt Mamas with the rags on our head, and, you know, but then they don't want to tell you that as much as they tried to demean us, it didn't keep Massa from trying to come into our house to be with us. But that's a whole nother conversation, so I will not rest there on this one. But then I bring us fast forward today. We are strong, we are courageous, we are leaders, and that's how we have grown to be, and we embrace that. But in being those things, we can't just be a woman. We have to be stronger than our counterparts. We have to be smarter than our counterparts. We have to be prettier than our counterparts. We have to be more articulate than our counterparts. And then we have to know somebody as well. You know, we can't just get ahead on just merits, because if we stand on that alone, we still get pushed down. So in having to be all those things, then yes, sometimes you might see me aggressive, because I have to say, oh no, hold up, you're not going to just look past me. These are the things that I bring to the table, and I am not going to allow you to dismiss me just on GP because of the color of my skin. Hence, we get that title. We can choose to carry it or not carry it. If you want to call me aggressive, I'm okay with it, as long as I am accomplishing the goals that I need to accomplish at the end of the day. And so,
better preach, Roxann, because
I love that.
I'm feeling all that, and I know personally it's impacted me the same way, Roxann, to the point where in my past, I have brought, you know, equal, if not greater, product value to the table in professional environments and community environments, and still, like you said, am either overlooked or undervalued, so that you do have to overstretch and overdo other people. And then when you do say, hey, why is it that you are not treating me the same, or why is it that this person is being evaluated this way and I'm being evaluated this way, then I become, why are you always questioning things? Why are you always creating, it comes across as, why are you always creating conflict? That's usually how it comes out.
yes.
So Elliott, what are your thoughts, having heard some of this today? And would this impact the way that you describe Black women in the future? Like, how is this going to impact you?
Oh, absolutely. It's something where, just self-awareness is a massive thing. Like, it changes, you know, because I could have done the exact same interview and said the exact same things, but just said one different word, and it would have changed the whole interview and it would have changed everything. But I feel like we would have missed out on this opportunity to actually talk about it and to actually share this information with people that may not ever get the chance to have this type of conversation. So I move forward from this really with being really optimistic about more conversations being had like this in the future, because I think that that's going to be something that helps everyone, everyone across the board, because like you said earlier, I feel like a lot of people are so afraid to have this conversation and to talk about these types of things. And I think that's how there becomes so much conflict, because if you're just sitting over there upset and I'm just sitting over there upset, well, how is anything resolved?
Where's the progress? Right.
Exactly.
And then I also, one of the messages I have for you as a friend and someone who loves you dearly is that we need people like you. We need particularly white people in this country to do this work, have these conversations, do the research. I mean, before you even approached me, you were like, I've read up on this, I've watched videos. I'm trying to really understand it. Don't just come to me and Roxann and be like, okay, what do I do now? That's not what you did. You did the research and you were like, okay, so this is where I've gotten. Now I need to take this to the next level. And I think that people who are supporting me could probably be challenged to take it to the next level too. And so Roxann, I kind of throw that to you. How do we empower, and how do you feel about that? Empowering people like Elliott, and the importance of empowering white men like Elliott, or however you identify, girls, gays, bays, non-binary bays, like whatever you want to call it, right? We all have to, let's be honest, we all have to freaking stick together, especially that group of people. So what are your thoughts about empowering Elliott to really continue these difficult conversations?
Well, again, Elliott, I applaud you for wanting to have the conversation and wanting to learn more, because you could have just kind of like let things be as they are. But in order for us to grow as human beings, period, we have to be able to look and see things through another's lens. And so by that, I would like to say to you is that not only do I applaud you, but I really appreciate the fact that you wanted to step back as a white male and say, you know what? I come with certain privileges that other people that don't look like me don't. And so for that reason, as a Black person, they're probably looking at you, you come from your white privilege, because regardless of, you could have been poor white, rich white, it doesn't matter. Because you are white, it gives you certain privileges over people that are non-white. And so looking at the privilege that you come with, and then saying, she didn't come aggressive, just almost kind of like seems a little condescending, and just making sure that you're aware of it. And it's like, hey, I didn't look at that way. And I appreciate you explaining that to me so that I can see it in a lens that I did not see it from, because you would not have, because you've never had to. But as Black people, they have to. So I would just recommend for white people, don't be afraid to be a part of the conversation. If you don't know something, ask. We'll be more than happy to educate you. Any Black person will be more than happy to just break it down to you to the simplest of forms, so that understanding comes about. And then when you understand.
And Roxann, let's address like the issue. So you were on this, you were with these beautiful queens, you were sitting there talking, you're describing this beautiful performance, right? We're going back to the clip now. And you said, it was Black girl magic. It wasn't aggressive. It was classy and all of that. The next time, because trust me, you will make a mistake again, because I make them. I make them all day, every day. I know Roxann makes them all day, every day. I use curse words way too much. all of that. But what we call it, at the Human Rights Campaign, we say, oops, ouch, which means
Oops, ouch, yeah.
I recognize that I just stepped into something that is uncomfortable or probably hurt someone's feelings. I maybe have said something wrong or used the wrong word. And oops, ouch, that probably hurt you. I'm going to acknowledge that. Can you help correct me? If you make a mistake, go, oops, that probably was a painful thing for somebody. Let me restate that because that was not my intention. That's all anybody can ask of you. Roxann, do you agree or?
Oh, I agree 1,000,000% because we all do every day, all day. And as long as we're alive, we're going to. And we all want that grace of forgiveness and saying, hey, I didn't know, it was not my intentions, and I will do better next time. And then that's all Elliott is saying, and Elliott should be given that opportunity. And more like people, don't be afraid to say, hey, I made a mistake. How can I be better? How can I be part of the solution versus part of the problem? And so,
yeah. How are you going to, when you leave this conversation today, because we're done basically, but how are you going to leave this conversation not allowing haters? Because trust, I went to your Instagram and your Twitter, Elliott, and I was like, Mama Bear started to kick in. Like I was start fighting folks. But you really can't do that, right? Because these are, anonymous people behind a keyboard just saying very hateful. I mean, I think somebody even told you to kill yourself at one point. And as somebody who's been bullied the majority of their lives, that has to be painful. So what are you going to do? And what are you going to commit to these two fabulous Black women that are challenging you to be strong and move forward? What are you going to do to empower yourself and continue to have these conversations despite the crazy that's happening on Twitter and Instagram?
Well, all of this is so new to me. Like before I filmed Drag Race, I had maybe 2,800 followers online. And today I have 137,000. So it's a very different, it's very different because, back then it would have been the same 6 people commenting on my stuff and liking pictures and whatnot. And so now, just by the sheer number of people, I'm under a microscope at all times. And so I think the best way to go forward from this is for, the fans and the people who genuinely care about me to understand intention and understand, try to see where someone else is coming from without instantly attacking them. But also being willing to have this conversation. So it kind of, in their
own spaces, right?
Yeah.
Like families.
Exactly. I think it's just so important to remember that intention is still a very real, valid thing. And just to not, forget that, because I feel like a lot of people say intention doesn't matter anymore. If you do something, you do something. The intention doesn't matter anymore. And I think that's where I get so turned around with this whole situation, because, I came from a place of true love, just trying to truly compliment and love on somebody for what they do so well. And so going forward with this, I'm going to truly try seeing how they may hear what I say, because I think that's something that most people don't do. They, everybody now wants to say, I said what I said.
I said what I said.
And I'm at some places that is 100% valid. Say what you say, because that is that. But when you're saying something about something that you may not know a whole lot about, try not to say it, because I did that as a child. I would always say big words as a little kid that I never knew the definition of, but I thought it made me sound older and more mature. And so I would say words that big SAT words as a little kid that I may have heard on TV, and I never knew what they meant, but I thought that they sounded good in a sentence. And so I think
you said what you said, but you said something wrong.
Exactly. And that's
Yeah.
the thing is like everybody can say what they want to say, but you have to understand the consequences that come from saying what you say. Because there is everyone has freedom of speech. But I think when people use that as a weapon, they forget you can say whatever you want, but you have to understand the aftermath of what you said.
Well,
And you have to
I just want to applaud you and Roxann for being, the consummate, brilliant, loving activist that you are, really setting the standard for, speaking for myself, Black women in our community in Las Vegas that can have an impact across our country. Roxann, we look to people like you. We look to amazing women like you. I know Elliott does too.
I bow down to Roxann.
Yeah, thank you for leading the way for us to continue this important work. And Elliott, let's do this again. Like we should just talk again. So
Yeah.
I'll come up with another controversial topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Long as it's not because Elliott said something, though.
Okay, right? Like, let's do it because we want to.
Exactly.
That was a little shade from Roxann.
It takes a lot of bravery to stand up in front of all your friends and your fans to be able to say, hey, I misunderstood something, I misspoke, and I am trying to educate myself because of it. And I want to move forward and bridge gaps and say, how do I become a better person? How do I am not intentionally being offensive and unsympathetic to how others may be feeling? And this for me shows that you felt bad about hurting the people that were hurt by it, and you want to try to do your oops and ouch and I apologize. How can Elliott be a better Elliott moving forward? And I think that you are accomplishing that. So I bow down and
thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And you keep your head up and you keep being the trailblazer that you are, because hopefully it will empower other people that are white people. It will encourage them to have the courage to say, let's have the conversations. If we can't talk to each other, we will never understand each other. And if we never understand, we will never end racism and prejudice as it exists in our world today. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you, Roxann. And girls, gays, theys, non-binary babes, let's do better. Let's do better. Let's work together. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Okay,
you.
love you guys. Bye-bye.